B'Shem Hashem Naseh V'Natzliach, Shiur Torah. Okay, so Parashat Tzav. Tzav comes from the word command, Letzaveh. So that's the name of the parasha. But also Tzav, the numerical value of it is 96. You know, the gematria, each letter in the Hebrew alphabet has a numerical value. Tzadik is 90, Vav is 6, 96. But one of the amazing things, what is 96? Who cares about 96? That this parasha has 96 verses. So it's very interesting how you see that in Hebrew, if you're a person that likes math and you like to do calculations, you can have a field day with Hebrew. You can have a field day with the Torah because there's so much math in Torah, because everything always adds up, and there's whether it's the numbers of letters in a certain parasha, whether it's the different scientific proofs, there's countless proofs using math. And even though I don't necessarily spend that much time doing gematria or anything like that, I always find things like that interesting because this shows that this book couldn't have been written by a human being. Because a human being, for them to write the story itself will take already a difficulty. To know how many verses are in the writing 96 verses is not necessarily the big deal. The big deal is that the core part of what this parasha is about a specific command. So it's about the word Tzav. And so using that word and having that word add to the same exact number of verses that you're going to use to describe the story that takes place, it's divine. It's not something that's something that a human being, regardless of how smart people are, it's not something that a human being can do. So Parashat Tzav, it talks about the issue of korbanot. This parasha is not necessarily in order as far as the storyline, because again, a lot of people make the mistake that they think that the parashot, each parasha is technically in order, meaning that right after Egypt we had Mount Sinai, and there's a certain story. We went to the desert, and then we went to Israel. So that's the general storyline. But the parashot that we have in the Torah are not necessarily always in that order. Meaning that sometimes you're going to have a parasha like this particular event that actually happened before last week's event. So it's not necessarily always in order. And that's why they always say that there's no first or last in the Torah. Meaning that sometimes you're going to have certain lessons that Hashem put specifically here, because right now is specifically a time that you need to learn this. Not necessarily because this took place exactly after last week's events. Mm-hmm. So it's more about relevance than it is about order. But the overall storyline, as far as from the beginning of the Torah to the end, obviously that's in order, but again, the intricate details in between are not necessarily always in order as far as time is concerned. So this parasha again talks about the korbanot. It talks about Aaron HaKohen and his sons getting the priesthood, Aaron HaKohen becoming the first Kohen HaGadol, which technically he was the second Kohen HaGadol, because Moses was the first Kohen HaGadol for that first week until the inauguration process that Aaron had to go through was completed, which took about a week, or took exactly a week. Moshe had that position. He was the Kohen HaGadol. So becoming a Kohen HaGadol is not like becoming president of the United States or of Israel or or our king or anything like that. This is a very, very intricate process that not only do you need to be elected by the one above, not by people, but aside from that, there's a very, very intricate and interesting and sometimes strange ritual that has to take place of how to do it. And this parasha talks about a lot of it. Now, talking about the different things that they did, where they picked up the korban in certain ways and things like that, we'll go over some of that, but realistically, as we always try to do, is prove, number one, that the Torah is relevant to us every week, regardless of the story being written 300 years ago or not. And second of all is, look at the specific details that are in the story itself that we can learn for because they apply to our life. So the beginning of this parasha, Hashem says, "Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe le'emor, Tzav et Aaron ve'et banav le'emor, zot Torat ha'olah, היא העולה על מוקדה, על המזבח כל הלילה עד הבוקר, ואש המזבח תוקד בו." Hashem spoke to Moses saying, "Command Aaron and his sons, saying, this is the law of the elevation offering." This is one of the korbanot. There's several different types of korbanot that you could do. It is the elevation offering that stays on the flame on the altar all night until the morning, and the fire of the altar should remain a flame on it. Okay, so again, he's telling them this is one of the specific types of korbanot that Hashem wants Moshe to tell Aaron and his sons to do. But the key is that he's telling him Tzav. Usually Hashem, when he says something to Moshe to do, you remember it from, let's say, for example, Kriyat Shema. "V'yedaber Hashem el Moshe le'emor, daber el bnei Yisrael," say to Am Yisrael. Or "Vayomer Hashem le'Moshe," say to Israel. It doesn't say Tzav. Tzav is command. It's a strong word. And that's the name of the parasha. So what is Chazal teaching us about this? Chazal tells us that here Hashem wants to teach us a very, very valuable lesson about His mitzvot. It's not just about learning Torah. It's not just about learning the basics. It's about actually the action of Judaism, because Judaism is a religion of action. It's not a religion of belief and of something theoretical. Judaism is a religion where you have to do stuff. So Hashem says, here's a time where I'm telling you to do something. This is how you're going to do this korban. You're going to go through this certain process. But I command you. Why command? Because it says, when you do my mitzvot, I want you to be zealous. I want you to be excited. I want you to be into it. You do a mitzvah, get into it. Have joy when you're doing the mitzvah. Not be one of these miskenim where you're like, oh, I have to eat kosher again. Oh, I have to keep Shabbat again. Oh, it's Shabbat again. I can't wait for Sunday. Oh, I have to do this. Oh, I have to go to the mikveh. Oh, I have to go pray again. Which unfortunately, a lot of people do, either unintentionally really. Because if you're already doing it, you might as well get into it, because you're doing it. Because realistically, Hashem is telling you that if you're doing it and you're not zealous about it, yeah, you're going to get credit for it, but it's not even a fraction of what you would get if you're really excited about it. So this by itself, this first verse, if we learn just enough from this first, just one word, the name of the parasha itself, can change our entire Judaism. Because if you start thinking about it, listen. When Hashem told Avraham Avinu, Avraham, give me your son, your only son. Avraham had two sons, technically. He had Ishmael and had Yitzchak. But he said, your only son. He didn't consider Ishmael his son. The one you love. Love both of them. No, the one you really love. And he told him, I want him to be a korban. I want you to kill him pretty much for me. Make him the korban. And then it says, Avraham went there in the morning. Baboker. Didn't just go. He could have went. Hashem didn't tell him, come tomorrow morning and do it. He said, come, do the korban. Do it tomorrow. He didn't say, he could have done it in the afternoon. Could have done it in the evening. He didn't have to run. But Avraham didn't even ask a question. The very next morning, early in the morning, when most people or everybody was pretty much still sleeping, he got on it and started going towards the mountain to kill his son. For Hashem. That's zealous. That's someone that not only didn't question Hashem, not only did he do what Hashem asked him to do, but was excited about it the whole time. That's zealous. If we can have even a fraction of that zealous type of degree that Avraham Avinu had, our entire Judaism changes. Shabbat becomes different. Eating becomes different. Imagine every time you say, Baruch Ata Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, she'akol niya b'dvaro.
Amen. Amen.
I did the blessing before, so I didn't say Hashem the way it's supposed to say, and I said Elokeinu. But the point I'm trying to make here is when you say bracha, you break it up into three. You're not supposed to say Baruch Ata Hashem and just run through it. Why? Because you have to have a kavanah. What are you saying here? You're saying that Hashem creates everything. Hashem is everything. That deserves a little bit more respect than Baruch Hashem, give me the drink already. Even though this is just a cup of water. Do you know how many miracles have to go through to happen for this cup of water to exist? And again, so to have the attitude of being zealous can change something as simple as a bracha. Something as simple as doing tefillin. Something as simple as anything else that you do. So just from this first sentence, it's a life changer already. You just got to pay attention to the details. So I think that is something that I found very, very interesting about the parasha, because again, it's something that's could really change our life. The second thing is, Or Chaim also explains that from this Tzav and just in general the first several verses is that the specific point that they found out of this versus all of the other korbanot is that this is the one korban that has to do with money loss, meaning you have to spend money to do it, a lot of money, but aside from that is usually this type of korban leads to money loss. You're losing work and things like that. And he specifically says these are the mitzvot that you should be zealous with. These are the ones you should really be excited to do. Because that's really telling Hashem that you know the parnasah is from Shamayim. When you're giving tzedakah, but you're giving tzedakah just because you already know that you have the deal that you just closed, it's going to give you the money. That whatever you're giving in tzedakah, it's going to give you 5 times that already. It's good. Oh Hashem, you give tzedakah. But when you're giving tzedakah before the deal closed, without even thinking about the deal, because you want to do what Hashem wants, that's being zealous. That's the key. That's what we want to aim for. That's our goal. The next thing is, the Midrash explains that in the same verse it says the word Torat Ha'olah. Zot Torat Ha'olah. This is the law of the elevation offering. So why does it say this is Torat Ha'olah? What's the significant meaning of this? Is that it's telling you this is the law of the specific korban. But to know that at times that we don't have the ability to do korban, we don't have the Bet HaMikdash, we don't have the tabernacle, we don't have all of this stuff anymore, you turn into your own Bet HaMikdash. You are your own temple. As a Jew, you are your own temple. What does that mean? If they praised and kitshu and made the temple holy, then the temple was holy. If they put beautiful things in it, if they put a lot of prayers in it, a lot of spirituality in it, it was full of kedusha, full of holiness, then the temple was holy. The first temple was on a higher level than the second temple. Forget about being more beautiful and a much more significant degree and so on and so forth. I'm talking about based on Kedusha. The first one was higher than the second one. So someone can come say, yeah, but you know what? Of course it was more holy because it had the 10 Commandments in there, the original ones. and the new ones, the second ones that we got, the ones that were broken, and the other ones, the second one didn't have it. It had the Shekhinah in there. It was beautiful, much more beautiful, it was bigger, and so on and so forth. Okay. But why is it that if you remove all of that beauty and you go to the tabernacle that we had in the desert is not exactly the most beautiful place in the world all the time. But the one we had in the desert is holier than both of the other ones. It's a higher level than both Beit HaMikdash. So it's not about the beauty as far as material beauty. It's the beauty as far as spiritual connection with Hashem. And the level we reached in the desert was the highest level that we ever had. So when Hashem is telling us, you are your own temple, it means that you can be as holy as you make yourself. If you want to be a tzaddik, you have the ability to be a tzaddik. If you want to be a rasha, you're going to be a rasha. Forget about the uniform and the beard and the hats and all of that other stuff. You want to do it, do it. But as far as being kadosh, as far as being holy, it's within your own control, your own ability. Obviously, the more you try, the more Hashem will give you as far as the feeling and ability and insight and knowledge. Torah is not necessarily something that you just learn like you learn math. Torah is something that you're actually gifted. You exert a certain amount of effort. In math, let's say, you're going to get the same amount of results. In Torah, you exert a certain amount of effort, you'll get some results. You exert even more effort, you'll get 3 or 4 times what you got the first time with the same exact effort. So it's not necessarily because of your effort that you got 3 or 4 times, it's because Hashem saw that you deserve it. So it's not like math or normal subjects. So the same thing is with Kedusha. If you want to make yourself holy, there are certain things that you can do that initially look extremely difficult, but in the long run, it becomes such an amazing way of life that to see the rest of the world around you living any other way becomes very, very troubling. Because you start looking, I don't understand why. They are asking you, how could you have 1 week out of the week, 1 day out of the week that you don't drive and you don't smoke and you don't do this? Or how can you have only kosher food? Or how can you, I don't know, whatever other things people ask. And you're looking at them the other way. How can you live with your wife half naked all the time? How can you live with a life that you don't have a break? All 7 days a week are the same. How can you live a life, you're thinking you're crazy, you think they're crazy. But who's really crazy here? Well, it's them. Because why? Because they're looking for something you already have. They just don't know what they're looking for. You already found it, but you don't understand how they're over there. Like it's just, there's a huge gap between the two. So Hashem is telling you here that by being zealous, by being excited, by having a lot of ambition, just like we do for work and money and all the things of this world that we have, being just as excited about mitzvot will change you from one person to a completely different level of kedusha, different level of person. And that's I think, again, just within the first verse, it's something that's enough to change your life. The second thing is the korban was a very, very important part of the Beit HaMikdash, and in general the way we sacrifice to Hashem, because that was the way that we repented for certain sins. In our day, since we don't have it, our korban is our table that we eat at. Every time that you eat, whether it's by yourself or with your family, whether it's in the morning, afternoon, or night, you have to make sure that you say a few words of Divrei Torah. Every single time. Someone on that table has to say Divrei Torah. Why? Because since it's the korban, it has to be holy. But if somebody just came, if one of the Kohanim instead of going through the whole ritual of what you're supposed to, like they're giving us in this Parashat, last week's Parashat, details of what you need to do, instead they said, listen, you know what, I'll burn it a little bit, and I'll just start eating. They didn't go through the whole process. Hashem wouldn't be too happy. As a matter of fact, the punishment is karet, death. Same thing with our dinner table. When we have dinner, when we have lunch, any time that we're eating, there's a table. We're not eating like animals in the middle of the street. We're eating somewhere, right? You say a few divrei Torah, you're respecting the process, because this is your mizbeach. So by adding holiness to a meal, even if the meal is 10 minutes, it doesn't need to be a lecture for 25 hours. Even if it's 10 minutes, say a few things of Torah, even if you already know it, even if everyone knows it, even if you can't think of anything other than the story of Adam and Eve, or anything simple. You add anything of divrei Torah into your meal, you're sanctifying the meal. You're making the meal holy. And you're respecting it. Otherwise, it's considered as if you've made a joke of the Mizbeach. You're considered a clown. And it's not exactly a good, like you're clowning, you're making a joke of the Mizbeach. You're making a joke of the sacrifice.
So if you finish eating and you're by yourself, how about Tehillim?
Yeah, perfect.
Tehillim
is perfect. Tehillim is Torah. Yeah, Tehillim, anything relating to Torah. Whether it's Tehillim, whether it's learning a Shiur online, on YouTube, saying something to your friend, anything relating to Torah. Again, it doesn't need to be 20 hours. It doesn't need to be even 20 minutes. It just needs to be a few minutes just to make the meal holy, and not necessarily like we're animals and we just ate just to survive. So that's one of the things that we need to learn from the Mizbeach, because again, our tables have become our Mizbeach.
Or if you can't think of something to say, so you could just Google Torah.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's exactly what you could do. Listen, I think that with the Torah in general, when you're adding Torah to your life and you're making it something that's part of your life, of your daily life, then it's very difficult to run out of words. It's very difficult to run out of things to say, because there's always something that's significant. That if you pay attention, you will find it significant. So now the next thing is, in regards to korbanot, and in regards of respecting the process, is that Hashem tells us there's certain korbanot. Most of the korbanot, you have to make the korban. You put the korban on the mizbeach. You burn it. There are certain korbanot that you burn the entire thing. There's one of them you burn the entire thing, but the other ones you leave some of it. You give it to the kohanim to eat. Some of them you give it to other people, not just the kohanim, to eat. Some of them you have to eat in one day. You're not allowed, anything that you leave over for the next day, you have to burn it. You can't eat it anymore. But then there's ones that you have to eat. You have 2 days to eat them. Now remember, this is not just a chicken. This is a bull or a sheep. It's big. It's a lot. So it's not necessarily always easy to eat this whole thing. Sometimes you have hundreds of korbanot in one day. So, of course, you have many kohanim. It's not one kohen that's eating all of this. But the point is that sometimes you're not going to have the ability to eat all of it. But Hashem said that you have some korbanot you'll have one day, some korbanot you'll have 2 days. But then he teaches us something very interesting. He teaches us about something called pigul. Pigul is something that he's telling us where if someone, before he eats the korban, he's thinking already, I may eat this. Like let's say, for example, you're allowed to eat this korban over the next 2 days. He's already thinking, I may need 3 days to eat this thing. Meaning with the intention that he's probably going to violate the law because it's so good, it's this. He's thinking this way. That korban immediately becomes taref, not allowed to eat it. Not allowed to eat it. It's not a korban anymore. The fact that he thought about making it a potential sin made it a sin completely.
An extra day.
Just thinking about it. He didn't do it. He didn't eat it on the third day already. He thought about, maybe I'm going to eat it on a day I'm not allowed to eat it. And the korban is no longer a korban. The korban is a complete sin. And that's called pigul. So what can we learn about pigul? Okay, we don't have korbanot. Again, we go back to the same thing. We don't have korbanot. What is Hashem teaching us out of this very interesting word, pigul? Hashem is telling us that our thoughts are the key to success. Meaning, if someone wants to have a successful marriage, successful relationship, he must only think about his wife. He's not allowed to think about other women in any way, shape, or form. Not allowed to watch them on movies, or on television, articles, newspapers. Not allowed. Has to be one woman in his life. As a matter of fact, someone who wants to be righteous, someone who wants to go in the derech Hashem, should usually refrain from being in businesses that deal a lot with women, if he's a man. So, for example, people that want to be righteous cannot be, Hashem Erechem, there's many jobs that you deal with a lot of women. Point as you got. So, the key that Hashem is teaching us here is that in order for us to have true success, our brain always has to be directed towards our goals. We cannot be one of these types of people who say, I wasn't really thinking, and I did it because I wasn't really thinking, or I wasn't really paying attention. That's why I blew the red sign, officer. No. The key is that for us to live a life that's successful, we have to always think about it, have to have our eyes on the ball. So when it comes down to marriage, unfortunately today, the statistics are terrible. In America, you have close to 80%, it may have crossed 80% already, of marriages in America end up in divorce. It's already gotten to a point where the statistics are so bad, it doesn't pay to get married. I mean, you're telling me that 8 out of 10 couples get divorced, which means that if I get married, I have a pretty much higher chance of ending up in divorce than ending up staying together. Because even that, let's say 20% that stay married, it's not necessarily means that 20% are actually happy. 20%, okay, it's 20% stayed married, they didn't get divorced, but they're not always staying together because they're so excited to be together. Sometimes people would rather stay miserable together than be separated, either because they fear being alone, or they're older, or something else happened. There's many, many reasons of why people stay together. The key is that we have the ability to change all of that. We have the ability to fix all of that, but it has to start with home. The Torah teaches a lot about the relationships that a man and a woman has to have, and it tells us a lot of things that go against our logic, especially with the way some people are brought up, where they think that certain things are supposed to happen, certain things make a lot of sense, but are not necessarily always what the Torah says. So when you tell somebody that doesn't know much Torah, tell me one of the commandments. Tell me one of the 10 commandments. Most people will tell you, Kaved et avicha v'et imecha. Respect your mom and your father. Right? The trouble with that is that just saying that verse alone is very limited in comparison to what that real rule is all about. Yes, you have to respect your mom and father. No question about it. But there are certain limitations. First one being, it cannot be above Hashem. Meaning, if your father and mother are telling you to do something that's against the Torah, you are not allowed to listen to them. Doesn't matter what, any way whatsoever, you're not allowed to listen to them. Okay. If your mom and dad are righteous, they have a certain level of respect that they get. If your mom and dad live as criminals against the Torah, not criminals like they rob banks, but criminals meaning they don't do any Torah mitzvot. In the Torah, it's considered a criminal. It's not an insult to people like that. That's the language of the Torah. Someone who doesn't follow the Torah is, in the Torah language, considered a criminal. Rasha. So if the parents live a life that's against the Torah, the level of respect that they get is drastically less and much more limited than parents that follow Torah and mitzvot. Meaning, if a righteous parent tells his son something that's obviously in compliance with the Torah, and he is righteous, there's rarely ever a reason to question what he says. He's your father, he's your teacher, he's righteous, and so on. Someone who doesn't keep Torah and mitzvot, he says something, but your rabbi says something else, you're not even allowed to consider your father's opinion. Because again, Hashem's first. Okay, this is not against anyone's parents or anything like that. This is just, again, what leads to the laws of the Torah. So what does this mean to us? The Torah says, "Kabel et avicha v'et imecha." But also the Torah says, "Al ken ya'azov ish et aviv v'et imo v'dabek be'ishto v'ayu lebasar echad v'yu shneim arumim ha'adam v'ishto v'lo yitposheshu." Therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and cling to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. They were both naked, the man and his wife, and they were not ashamed. We'll address the entire verse. This is in Parashat Bereshit, chapter 2, verse 24 and 25. So first it's telling me that man will leave his father and mother. Then it says he's going to be with his wife. He's going to cling to his wife. So the lesson we learn from here is when a man gets married, or a woman gets married, their spouse immediately becomes number one above their parents. Parents do not like to hear this if they don't live a Torah and mitzvot life. Even if they do live a Torah and mitzvot life, it's still hard to hear it. But that's what Hashem says. And not only did he say it, he said it in the beginning of the book. In the beginning of the Torah, he reminded us, if you want to get and accept and understand the rest of the love letter that I wrote you 3,300 years ago, you already have to have your eyes on the ball. Just like we talked about Pigul, you want to have the Korban go through and finish the entire process, have your eyes on the ball. Always think about doing the mitzvah. You want to accept and learn the Torah that I'm willing to give you, already realize that from the beginning there are certain things that have precedence. There are certain things that have a certain order. It may not always make sense to you. It may not necessarily always be what you want to hear, but that's the order that Hashem put it in this world. So as much as our parents don't want to hear that our wife is number one or our husband is number one, that's a reality. What happens in a situation where the parents create an argument? I have a friend, a little older than us, well, a lot older than us. His son, Lo Aleinu, he just went through a divorce. He's going through a divorce right now. Why a divorce? His wife, wonderful woman, before they got married. Successful, very rich parents. Great. What she didn't tell our husband, and now divorcee, is that her father is very attached to her. Very attached. And her father pretty much wants to make sure that she's just like his little girl when she was 5 years old. So after they got married, the father was constantly involved in their life. As a matter of fact, even the wedding the father planned, which is, by the way, not exactly a normal thing to do. A father is not supposed to plan his daughter's wedding. But assuming that doesn't matter, he stayed in the daughter's life, constantly telling her everything that's wrong with her husband, telling her how he's not good enough for her, driving him crazy, all to the point where he had to leave her, because this is not a normal life. And this is someone that I know personally. Now that woman, she did what her father wanted, but now she's divorced. Maybe her father is happy, but I don't see her being very happy about the divorce. Now, there's a story in my cousin told me, he knows personally, of how great of a sin it is for a parent or a brother or a sister or anyone to get involved in the marriage. There's a story that didn't happen a few years ago in Israel, where a mother got involved in the marriage of her daughter, and she told her that her husband wasn't good enough for her. And this was a righteous person. This is a tzaddik. It wasn't someone secular. This is a person that was keeping Torah and mitzvot, and so was her daughter. And she told her daughter that her husband is not good enough for her, this, that, the other thing. Long story short, she ended up divorcing him, getting a get, divorcing him, and for no real reason. And within a matter of a few weeks, the mother that encouraged the daughter to divorce found out that she has a terminal illness and died within a few weeks. There's no greater sin involving marriage than breaking up one. The reason why I mention all of this is because in today's age, people try to cling on whatever mitzvot seem easy to them. Respecting your parents is not always a very difficult mitzvah to do. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, but the basic part of it is not the most difficult thing in the world. For some people, it's much easier to give their father a call every day and say, I love you, than to do tefillin every day. But we always have to know what's the order of things. Which comes first, which comes second. Hashem says, if you erase His name, it's a very, very big sin. And the soul is cut off from the world. That's if you erase Hashem's name. The Yud Kei Vav Kei, if you erase that name, it's a very, very big problem. But He has one condition where you're allowed to do it. Shlom Bayit. If a woman was thought during the Beit HaMikdash days to cheat on her husband, they didn't need private investigators. They would take the woman to the Beit HaMikdash. They would write the name of Hashem on something, put it into the water. The ink of Hashem's name would go all into the water, so Hashem's name in essence would be erased. And then they would make the woman drink this water. If she cheated on her husband, she would immediately blow up. She would die. If she didn't, then they knew that she was righteous. Then the Kohen HaGadol would give her a blessing that all of her sons would be righteous and all of her sons would be very, very Gedolei Adol. So Hashem says that for Shlom Bayit, you're allowed to erase my name. So someone that creates a violation of a marriage, a parent, a brother, a sister, a friend, that creates a problem between a couple, if the punishment for erasing Hashem's name is so bad, with the exception of one thing which is for Shlom Bayit, so obviously the punishment for violating Shlom Bayit is much greater than that. And the problem in today's generation is that sometimes we forget about these things and we let our environment around us make the decisions for us. There's a very famous story with Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu. There was a couple, a guy and also again in Israel, where this one guy had a very, very modest wife, very nice, very tzadikah, mamash. And one day he had a couple of his friends over, and he asked his wife, "Can you please?" He went into the kitchen and he told her, "Please, can you bring me and my friend some tea, some coffee?" So his wife was very, very modest, very tznuah. So she cut up everything in the kitchen, and she called him from the kitchen if he'd come take it from her, because it's not really the best thing if there's only guys for a woman to be in front of all the guys and sit down with the guys. It's not exactly appropriate, not in Judaism at least. So she called him to bring it. So he went there, brought it, and then his friends started making fun of him. His friends were all secular, didn't have any Torah, any mitzvot, anything. Like, well, you're living in the Stone Age. Your wife, why is she's sitting with us? What kind of wife you have? It's like a shoe, this wife. What is this? She's supposed to be friendly. What's wrong with her? How come she doesn't want to talk to us? What's this? They started abusing him and just completely insulting him. Now this guy didn't have exactly a spine, so what did he do? He joined them. He started abusing her also. Started making fun of her. All the way to the point where by the end of the night, they all decided, not him, they all decided that he should kick her out. And he kicked her out. So his friends found him a new girl. So he has this new girl, marries. His friends come over one day. His wife is sitting with them, this new wife, not modest. Everything that the other one was, the opposite. So he says to her, "Honey, he's used to the old wife. Can you make up some coffee, some tea for a friend?" She goes, "Who do you think I am? You go make it." So he says, "What do you mean I go make it? Please, go make it." She starts yelling at him in front of his friends. So what does he do? He feels like, he has to be macho next to his friends. He starts yelling back. He didn't realize that this woman is not like the old one. So what did she do? She took the bottle of Og that was next to her and smashed it on his head. Broke his head. Went to the hospital, emergency room. Sipur gadol. Problems. Obviously, as he's getting, after he finishes getting his stitches, he gets a divorce, and he wants to go back to the old one. So he goes to his rabbi, which was Rabbi Raphael Kadir Zabin. And Rabbi Raphael obviously feels bad for him, but at the same token, he knows that his ex-wife is not going to want to be with him. Anyway, they tried to make the shidduch. His ex-wife, tzadikah, she doesn't want to be with him. He says, "Listen, you're not a tzadikah. I'm trying to be a tzadikah. You have all these friends. I don't want that life. But I'll do whatever the Gdol Ador, which is Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu, says." He's one of the Gdolei Ador. I'll go and I'll talk to him. If he says I should be with you, I'll go back with you. Whatever he says, I'll do. So they go to Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu, and Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu says, yes, you should go back with him. And when she asked why, he said, because after the last one broke his head, he probably got a little bit of sechel back inside. He learned his lesson.
You would hope.
So the key is when one is marrying his wife, he has to make sure that he makes her number one. Over everybody. Not over his friends, his parents, and everybody else. And again, it's very, very critical because, again, sometimes you think that the parents are helping. Sometimes you think that when a mother of a son or a daughter tells the spouse that they should clean a certain way or cook a certain way, and they're telling it to their son or daughter, they're not telling it to the wife. Maybe you should tell her yourself in your own words. That's different. That's advice. But when
Behind her back.
when you're doing it behind the back, you're creating a problem. It's just why when anytime someone has an argument with his wife or a wife has an argument with a husband, you're not allowed to talk about it to anybody. Only between each other. Can't talk about it with your parents, your friends, no one.
Try to sell.
Unless it's someone that can guide you based on Torah. And based on Torah, you don't need 50,000 people to know it. Why can't you, sometimes you want to spill it off your chest. You want to tell people, listen, my wife, she's a nightmare, she's this, she's that. You want to tell somebody sometimes. Why is it a bad idea to tell people? Because when you tell people something like that, they will visualize what she is. So all they know about her is that she drives you crazy. So this was one day out of 365 days a year, she drives you crazy. The other 364 days that she does good for you, they don't know about that, because you didn't talk about that. So their entire picture is that she really drove you crazy for 365 days. So the next day when you come back and you want to go for coffee with the guy, and you bring your wife, and he has his wife, he's looking at you as, my buddy, my poor guy, look at this woman that he has. He's starting to talk about your wife to his wife. Yeah, what a misken my friend is. Because he only has one visual of what she is. Mm-hmm. So when you tell him only about your problems, that's all he's going to know. So he's going to think he's going to have your wife as someone that's terrible. So every time you're going to ask him for advice later on, he's going to give you advice based on that information. If you're going to ask him, listen, do you think I should go on this business trip or on this vacation but without my wife? He's immediately going to say yes. Not because he thinks it's really a good idea for a husband to go on vacation without his wife, but because you have such a bad wife, Baruch Hashem, you're able to go on vacation by yourself. It's bracha from Hashem that you're able to go on vacation by yourself. To get away from this devil. Because he's thinking that she's bad. So when it comes down to the intimate issues between a man and his wife, you're not allowed to share it with the world.
Keep it quiet.
You have to keep it quiet. There's no reason. Mm-hmm. Another thing is, when a couple has children, one of the most important things about raising kids, based on Torah, is never argue in front of the kids. Mm-hmm. Not only with each other, but in general. Meaning that if the kids see one parent say something, they can never even think that they can get a different answer from the other parent. If the mother said, no, you're not allowed to have ice cream, they should never even think that if they ask the father, he's going to say yes. The decision always has to be uniform. Whatever mom says, that's all there is. Whatever Abba said, that's all there is. That's it. There should never be a difference of opinion between the parents. If there's a difference of opinion between the parents, there's going to be more and more problems. And eventually it's going to create an animosity, not only between the kids and one of the parents at some point or another, but also between the parents themselves, resenting each other, even if it's unintentional. So the key for a marriage to work is to be exactly what the Torah says, which is a unified soul. It's a single soul. Act as if you are one person. She says something, kadosh. You say something, kadosh. It's not a matter of just respecting the other person, but it's getting to a point where you are thinking alike. That's why the most critical thing for a couple to do in order to get close in the highest level has nothing to do with physical. Has nothing to do with being intimate. Has nothing to do with going to the movies. Has nothing to do with eating dinner together. Has nothing to do with anything physical. A couple that wants success has to spend a little bit of time each day learning something about Torah together. Why Torah? Why not math? Why not science? Why not food? Why can't we cook together? That's fun too. Yeah, it's fun. No one's saying you're not allowed to do it. But Torah is something spiritual. And something spiritual, the spiritual connection, is a drastically higher level than anything physical. Physical ends. Physical has an ending. Food, eventually you eat all of it or it goes bad. Okay? Anything that's fun, whether it's being on a roller coaster or being intimate or making money or anything in the world, it eventually ends or it becomes boring. It's not something that is everlasting. Spiritual is forever. Spiritual is eternal. So when you have a session where you're eating dinner together with your wife or your husband and spend 15 minutes together, a half hour together, and during the time that you're eating, you're, number one, making the mitzvah of making the divrei Torah on the table, which we talked about earlier. On top of that, you're doing it with your wife, so you're learning something together. You're making multiple mitzvot at the same time. Then you're doing Birkat HaMazon. But at the same time, you're creating a spiritual connection like nothing else, like something that's extraordinary. And that will give you a much, much deeper connection with your partner than anything else could ever do. Because again, you're not only feeding the physical, you're feeding the spiritual. The reason why I'm veering off of different things, one is talking about not letting anyone get in between a marriage, two, making sure that you're connected, is because Hashem told us that to erase His name is a very, very big problem. But you're allowed to erase my name for Shlom Bayit. So He is telling you that Shlom Bayit is extremely important for Him. Shlom Bayit is the Torah. In order for someone to be successful in Judaism and in general in life, he has to have Shlom Bayit. So much so that a man that has an evil wife is guaranteed Olam Haba. Mm-hmm. Because he gets hell already in this life. This is not theoretical or a joke. I'm telling you that's serious.
He gets what?
Olam Haba, he gets Gan Eden. Someone that has an evil wife in this world, he lives with her his whole life. Not he divorced after a year. I'm talking about someone who lived with an evil wife his whole life, and vice versa, obviously. A woman that had an evil husband is guaranteed Gan Eden.
ופטור ממרור בפסח.
So one time there was a guy where his wife was so special that every day that he would come home, as soon as he would come home, she would immediately start screaming at him for some reason or another, and she would throw out one of her slippers at him. Every day. Every day, as soon as he came home, she would throw one of her slippers at him. Nightmare. Not fun. Every day he gets hit with a slipper, or a shoe, or something. Violent woman. So he decides to go to his Rav. I forgot the name of the Rav, but it's a real story. It's not a joke. His Rav was a big rabbi. He's one of the Gdolei Ador. I don't want to say the wrong name. He goes to his Rav. He says, I can't do it. I cannot do it. I cannot be with this woman for one more day. I've been with her for I think 15 or 20 years already. One more day, I can't do it. You have to give me a get. This is not after a week or a month. He's been getting shoes on his head for 20 years. So the rabbi, was a very special rabbi. It wasn't your ordinary rabbi. He goes, okay. Just wait in my living room for a little while. I'm going to get some paperwork. I'll be back in a little while. Okay. So he leaves in 15 minutes, half hour. Eventually what happens when you have nothing to do? You fall asleep. So the man tells the story of what happens when he falls asleep. He falls asleep and he has a dream. He has a dream that he goes up to Shamayim, and he's in front of the 3 Dayanim. He's in front of the 3 judges. And they give him the cheshbon. They give him pretty much his accounting of what he did in his life. And he said, yeah, okay, so you did some mitzvot. But let's see all your avirot, all of your sins. And they have a scale. And he starts seeing that the scale of the sins that he made is getting a little heavy, a little heavy, a little heavy. And it's a little more than his mitzvot. So then one of the judges turns around and he says, bring the shoes. And they start putting all of the shoes, every slipper that he got. December 1st he got this, December 2nd he got this. Everywhere, every day, they put all on the scale of the mitzvot. All the way to the point where the scale is even.
Wow.
The sins and the mitzvot are exactly even. That's when he wakes up. Oh, and actually, before he woke up, they told him, all you needed is one more, and you have Gan Eden. And that's when he wakes up. So he wakes up, he sees the rabbi. Rabbi's like, okay, so you ready? He goes, no, I'm not. I need to go home right now. I need to go home right now. He needs one more.
With the shoe.
He spent the rest of his life with this woman. Another story was this one guy had not the best wife, and every day she'd do whatever she can to torture the guy, poor guy. So one day they go to Shiur Torah, and there's a big knesset. They go to Shiur Torah, and the rabbi says, a man that has a evil wife is guaranteed olam haba. So the husband is at least thinking to himself, at least that, oh Hashem. So he goes home, and the next day, wakes up, and gets to, he's about to go to work, and he passes the kitchen, he sees his wife cooking already. Honey, I made you breakfast. Okay, eats it, fine, goes, okay, see you later. Gives him a hug, leaves. He comes back, and, later that night, he's got, instead of a shoe, he's got dinner. Everything is great. She went crazy, this woman. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. This is going on for a week already. He's losing his mind. He's like, what happened to this lady? What, this shiur changed her life? I don't understand.
He has a new life. Open-minded.
So he goes, talks to his rabbi. He goes, listen, I think my wife is cheating on me or something. I don't know what's going on because she completely, my whole life she's, torturing me. All of a sudden, she's nice. I don't know what's going on. So can you talk to her, please? So he goes, okay. So he tells his wife, please, go see the rabbi. He wants to see you. In those days, they respected the rabbis. The rabbi wants to see you. They go see him. Not today. Like, oh no, tell him to text me. So she goes to the Rav, and Rav, asks a bunch of questions, and then she says, listen, your husband says that you changed a little bit in the last week. He goes, yes, exactly, I did change. Why did you change? Because I heard that if my husband has a bad wife, he'll have olam haba. He goes, okay, so why did that make you change? He goes, over my dead body he's going to have olam haba. So, the point of the story is, make sure you're very careful who you pick. Make sure you're very careful. Another thing that is important in the marriage is to make sure that there is a respect between each other that does not have any exceptions. If a marriage is going to work, respect is more important than any other rule that you can have in a marriage. If a husband does not respect his wife, and he yells at her or embarrasses her, it's no less than eating chazir. That's what a lot of people don't understand, is that they think, sometimes you tell some people, listen, you eat kosher? Yeah, it's, I eat sometimes kosher. You eat chazir? No, apitom, over my dead body, I never eat chazir. No, I just eat some chicken once in a while. Because to them, chazir is, eating pork is the worst thing in the world. Mm-hmm. But then you tell the same guy, why did you just yell at your wife? Don't you know it's so bad? He goes, what's the big deal? In reality, based on Torah, it's a very, very big sin. It's even bigger than eating chazir, because chazir is one sin. Okay, you ate it, that's it, it's over. Once you ate it, that's it. The sin is over. Forget about the unhealthy part of it. That's not necessarily a sin, it's just that part. But again, the sin is over. When someone embarrasses their spouse, it's such a severe sin that it can continue for the rest of their life. If a husband or a wife destroys their spouse's confidence, they can live the rest of their life in a different way than what they were supposed to. Someone that had the potential to be Gdol Ador, that knew a lot of Torah, one day that his wife calls him stupid, or a nobody, in front of his Rav, in front of his friends, in front of his mother, in front of somebody, and embarrasses him, makes him feel like such a zero, but not a zero because he has humility. Zero because he truly believes he's a zero. That all of his chokhmah disappears from him. The same thing with a husband doing to a wife. A husband that tells his wife that she's not good enough can change the way that she treats the kids to such an extent that instead of raising kids that are righteous and have Torah in their life and respect their father, respect their mother and everything else, she's already going to think, he already doesn't think that I'm good enough anyway, so why even bother? So you have 4 criminals living in your house. All from one single word. One single word. I'm not talking about a whole life of yelling and screaming at each other. Of course, kavachomer that it's much worse if it's yelling and screaming every day. But I'm talking about even one bad conversation where one embarrasses the other can destroy multiple lives, which means that the sin is endless. One time a couple came to Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. They were both about 23 years old. The husband and the wife were 23 years old. And they came to Rabbi Ovadia and they said, listen, we just had a kid. It's our first kid. We need to know what we should do. He asked them, how old are they? And they said, we're 23 years old. And he says, you're 20 years too late. What do you mean? How could we be too late? The baby was just born. He's only a few months old. It was the first rule of successful marriage and raising kids is to discipline yourself first. First you have to be mechunach. First you have to be disciplined. First you have to have manners. Then you can teach manners. If you're an animal, if you're a criminal, if you're living a life that's against the opposite of what's supposed to be, how are you going to be able to teach anyone else to do the opposite? And that's why when a husband and a wife are telling the kids something to do, let's say, for example, for a little kid, a little baby, they tell them, listen, don't eat with your hands. The baby needs to learn not to eat with their hands. A lot of people have made it a normal thing to do where the kids eat with their hands until they're like 5 years old or something. It's not supposed to be that way. There are forks, there are knives. We're not animals. We're supposed to eat with forks and knives. Okay, they need to learn as early as possible. I'm not saying that an infant that's 30 days old needs to eat with a fork and knife, but again, a 5-year-old needs to eat with a fork and knife. When you explain that to the child will do it. Why? Because the child is excited to do whatever Abba and Ima say. Because Abba and Ima are Superman and Superwoman. They're everything. But then when the child sees that Abba or Ima eats with their hands,
And they follow.
Not only do they follow, but they develop a bit of hatred towards their parents. A subconscious hatred towards their parents. Because they're saying that Abba and Ima have told me repeatedly that I should not act like an animal and I should eat with my fork and knife and not with my hands. But then they eat. So really, they just want to tell me what to do. Really, because I know they're not animals, because I see them, because they're superhuman. They're Abba and Ima are Superman and Superwoman, right? So they think you're the greatest. So if you're telling them one thing but doing the opposite, so they're just thinking that you're just trying to torture them. You're just saying no. You just want to torture them, and what ends up happening is that they start to develop a bit of hatred towards the parent, and it creates a disconnect. And that's why sometimes you have, and I've met a few people like this, kids that grow up and have a very, very limited amount of connection between them and the parents. Despite that the parents spent their entire life saving, raising the kid, and doing everything they can for the kid can't stand them. No, you talked to your mom? Yeah, about 3 years ago. What do you mean you talked to your mom 3 years ago? How could you not talk to your mom for 3 years? I don't know, she's my mom. She's just some stranger. People don't understand that this is not normal. But it's as much the parent's fault as it is the child's fault. If not more the parent's fault than the child's fault, actually. Because the parent is responsible for the foundation. The child will develop eventually their own opinion once they get older. But the foundation is the parent's responsibility. When the parents act with unity, a lot of good develops from it. The kids are good, the marriage is good, spiritual and physical is good. When there's a disconnect, only bad comes out of it. Whether the disconnection comes because somebody's brother is in the middle of the relationship, or somebody's sister, or somebody's parents, or somebody's uncle, or somebody's friends, or whoever wants to put their nose into the relationship, creates that animosity between the couple. Number one, it's a very, very big problem for the marriage. And number two, that person that thinks that they're doing good by getting in the middle of the marriage is actually putting their life on the line. And there are more than one story, there are quite a few stories of people that put their nose where it doesn't belong, and Hashem didn't like it so much that He ended their life or made their life a very big living hell. So it's mamash a sakana to be involved, to get involved into a marriage and give inappropriate advice is mamash putting your life at risk. I'm not talking about just potentially losing a friend or anything like that. I'm talking about putting your life at risk. So, if you ever have a situation where someone is asking for advice, you have to really think twice of, number one, if you want to give that advice, and two, if what you're saying is right. Because again, your opinion is worthless. It's what does Hashem think? If you're using what Hashem thinks is what Hashem thinks. Go to the rabbi is a different story. But again, sometimes your friends are going to confide in you, and not everybody exactly is a ben or bat Torah. They're going to want to talk to their friends. So again, think about things based on what does Hashem want. What is Hashem's opinion? Not what your opinion is or my opinion is. What is Hashem's opinion? And that's the opinion that's the only opinion that counts. And in order for you to succeed with marriage, you have to have that connection. You have to be a team. You have to be respectful for each other. Another thing is that you have to do with marriage is that each person needs to know the other person's role. A man's role, generally in our day, in our world today, is to provide. A woman's role is to take care of the house. That does not necessarily apply all the time. There are some women that are drastically more successful than their husbands, and that's okay too. But at the end of it all, she is still a woman and you are still a man. You still have certain responsibilities and you still have certain emotions. A man wants to have a good marriage, he has to realize that as far as money is concerned, he cannot restrict his wife to things that are necessary. A man is not allowed to be cheap. Not allowed. You can be frugal, meaning you don't need to spend every dollar you have because your wife has an addiction to bags or to shoes. I'm not talking about being stupid. I'm talking about being compliant with Torah. A man is not allowed to be cheap. If his wife wants to get clothes, which is within reason, you're able to afford it, you're not allowed to say yes. You're not allowed to say no.
Right.
Doesn't matter that she has them already. If a woman needs help with the house, you have to get her a cleaning lady. As a matter of fact, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, which is again, Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, for anybody who doesn't know, was Gadol Hador. He wasn't a regular rabbi. He's the biggest giant of generations, not just one generation. It was a big loss that we lost him a little over a year ago. This is someone who knew the entire Torah to such an extent that we could spend 1,000 years and maybe get to 1% of what he knew. This is not a normal person.
Was it a little bit over a year ago?
Yeah, he died a little over a year ago. So anyway, so Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, even during the times where he was very, very poor, he still got his wife a cleaning lady. Why? Because he knew that his wife needed the help. And if it meant that he wasn't going to eat or drink or have something that he needed to have, but his wife would have it, he made that a ruling. That's it. Husband is not allowed to restrict his wife. By restricting his wife with money, he's going against the ketubah that they signed. There are a few things that a man signs on the ketubah. You have a kosher wedding, you have a ketubah. One of the things that a man signs off on is that he's going to give her money. Not just money if something happens. I'm talking about money like in this world. He has to provide for her. Meaning there's no limitation of what she needs. If she needs a cleaning lady, he needs to get her a cleaning lady. If she needs a few $100s a week to do a personal shopping, not shopping for the house. Some people say, oh, listen, you know what? I give her $200. I give her $200 a week. Yeah, but wait, the $200 a week she uses for buying groceries for the house? Yeah, she uses most of it for the groceries. So you didn't give her $200. You gave yourself $200. You need to eat also. What does she have? So again, people have to think of the wife as themselves, not something separate. There cannot be two separate parties. They have to be like whatever I would want for myself, I want for the wife. Even if I can't get myself to give it to myself, I still need to give it to my wife. Because sometimes people are cheap for themselves. There used to be an old joke, Israeli joke, where somebody, I had my friends in Israel would say it. It's somebody so cheap that they don't want to go to the bathroom because they don't want to buy food again. So the key is sometimes you have people that are so cheap that they can't bring themselves to buy something for themselves, whether it's clothes or it's a food or whatever it is. Not because they don't have it, because they're very cheap. Aside from that being an illness, it's literally a sickness. It's a sickness. I feel bad. People like that, you have to feel bad for them. Even if someone has that and he hasn't been able to overcome being cheap, he's just cheap. You can't become Superman overnight. It takes time. He still cannot be cheap with his wife. He can be cheap with himself, but that's not her problem. So it's very important for a person to know that in order for his marriage to work, in order for him to sanctify the marriage and make the marriage holy, there are certain responsibilities he has. Another very important thing for a husband to do is to buy his wife presents. It does not need to be a car or a house or something even expensive. I'm talking about tiny, small things where I have my cousin in Israel, he told me one of his friends he gave this advice to, and it changed the marriage overnight. Literally changed it. He had this one friend, Avrech. Avrech is someone that studies Torah all night, all day. They don't have a regular job. They go to yeshiva and study from morning to night. And he had some issues with his wife. Wasn't exactly the best marriage in the world. And he just had a daughter. And from the minute the daughter was born, she's been in the hospital for 3 months. Constant health problems. She hasn't left the hospital. 3 months in the hospital. And on top of that, he's not getting along with his wife. Not getting along. So he tells him, if you take this on yourself, it will help you in every way you want. He goes, what? He goes, work on a Shlom Bayit, do certain things, and one of the things that he said to do is start adding presents to your needs. What do you mean? Like every time you go, every day you go to yeshiva, on the way home, buy your wife anything. Buy her a candy bar, buy her...
Roses.
Doesn't need to be roses. Roses are expensive every day. Something for $1 even. Just to show her that you thought about her. Doesn't need to be roses. Roses can be expensive. You buy roses every single day, you're going to end up needing 3 jobs. But something, anything, doesn't even need to be bought. It can be anything. Just to show her that she really was on your mind every day. And the guy said, okay. He took it within a month and a half. He tells him, you wouldn't believe what happened. This is what happened. My baby was released from the hospital, completely healthy, and they don't even know why she was even in, what was wrong with her before. She's so healthy right now that they don't believe that she was even sick for 3 months.
Wow.
He goes, okay, and how's the marriage? He goes, couldn't be better. He goes, the little things that I get my wife, sometimes I get a candy bar, sometimes something small, something meaningless that I think is really not a big deal. She makes it like the best husband in the world. And he goes, it's like even better than the first day we were married. Something as small as that. Hashem made marriage a very, very, very holy thing. In Judaism, it's so holy that in the beginning of the Torah, he talks about it. In the beginning of creation, this is not, we had to wait until Moshe Rabbeinu to learn this. We didn't have to wait until this week's Parashat to learn about it. We have it in the beginning of the Torah. Shlom Bayit is very, very, very important. And the key is for us to know that, because the sooner we know it, the better our life is going to be, and more in line with Hashem that it's going to be. So I think that it's a few things, one suggestion I would give you guys as far as something to do, or anyone that's watching it, make sure if you can't think about your wife every single day,
Buy something every day.
buy her something at least once a week. Every Shabbat, pick up flowers. There should never be a Shabbat without your wife receiving flowers. $5 flowers mean just as much as $50 flowers. You do not need to spend $50 or $100 or $1,000. Whatever's within your budget. The point is, she will appreciate either one of them the same. Especially when it's every week. Especially when you pick them. Now when you have your secretary order it for you, oh, make sure my wife gets this thing, and it just becomes one of these statues in the house. When you went to the store and you picked up the actual flower, that means $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
When you just have your secretary order something and
It's
it
not
just
the
shows
same.
up at the house,
It's not the same.
it becomes something that eventually loses its meaning. So the key is to make sure that she knows you love her. The key is for her to know that you love her. And the same thing vice versa. When you have that type of connection, anything is possible. When you don't have that connection, the marriage and life around you becomes very vulnerable. The kids become vulnerable, the education becomes vulnerable, everything becomes vulnerable. Everything is on eggshells. And that's where we go back to this parasha where Hashem said, it's so important that you have your eye on the ball at all times, it's so important that even when you're thinking about the korban, you think that you're going to do good from the beginning until the end, with never even thinking about doing something else, that if you do think about something else, I already know you're not going to succeed, so I'm already going to tell you, don't even bother trying. Tarif, not allowed to do this korban. It's so important to be always focused on what we need to do, that Hashem says that even the korban, you can't even think the wrong way. And it's the same thing with our marriage. A marriage cannot work if a man has his eyes on other women. That's why if women knew better, they would never allow their husbands to have a TV in the house. It's not for the woman to not have a TV in the house. It's for the man not to have a TV in the house. Why? Because what happens when a man has a TV, it's what women sometimes don't realize. When rabbis say that the house should not have a TV, they're not saying it because they want to punish the woman. They're saying it because they're trying to help the woman. What happens? Women don't have the same type of brain as we do, where we think with the wrong parts of our brain sometimes. Women see a man, and they see somebody, they see a person. Men see a woman, and they see potential. Potential avirot, potential sins, not potential good. So when a man watches a television, he's seeing all of these potential women. In his mind, he thinks he can get them. In his mind, he's thinking, wow, these are pretty women. And then 2 minutes later, his amazing wife gives him dinner, and he looks at her. And what does he do? He's comparing her to her. Who do they have on television? They have ugly people on television? Last time I watched television, it's been a while, but last time I watched something, I don't remember seeing anybody ugly on television.
No.
They don't put ugly people on television.
Beautiful.
So what happens? The man is, even if he's not intentionally doing it, he's comparing the woman on TV to the woman right next to him. And what ends up happening sometimes? Lo aleinu. Sometimes he even thinks about her when they're intimate. He thinks about a different woman. It's so bad to think about a different woman or a different man that some parts of the Torah say, Chazal say, that it's debatable if the child is considered a kosher child. That's how important someone's thoughts are. It's debatable if the child is considered kosher. If the woman thought about a different man, or vice versa, a man thought about a different woman. It's debatable. That's the thing. Which is, again, in today's rotten society, what do they tell you? Listen, once you get older, maybe your wife or your husband's not as attractive, so think about other people. This is directly against the Torah. But it's become normal. One time there was there's a story in the Gemara. Rabbi Akiva was walking with Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer. And they saw this child pass by them, and he gave them respect. Usually, Rabbi Akiva had 26,000 students, 26,000 students. This is number one Jew. He's not a regular rabbi. Each one of these people was able to bring back the dead. It's not; these are not normal people that were collecting tzedakah in the corner for their 15-person keilah. This is huge. People in the Gemara, if their name is mentioned in the Gemara, it's because they had the ability to bring back the dead. That's the only reason. If their name is not mentioned, it's because they could be very, very righteous and huge tzaddikim, but they weren't at that level. Obviously, all of this power to bring back the dead is through Hashem. It's not through them. That's a given. But the point I'm trying to tell you is that if someone's name is specifically mentioned in the Gemara, it's because they were at that level. Rabbi Akiva was the highest level. Halacha ke Rabbi Akiva. Meaning every halacha where there's a debate and Rabbi Akiva puts his opinion, the halacha is always his opinion. That's Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua. They see a child, he doesn't give them the respect. Rabbi Yoshua says the child is a mamzer, meaning his mom was not married to his father. His real father, there's probably out of wedlock, marriage out of wedlock, but one of the people was married. Either the father was married or the mother was married. Mamzer. Very big problem for mamzerim, by the way. Just so you know, someone that's a mamzer can only marry a mamzer. In Judaism, not allowed to marry a regular Jew. Or a convert, they're allowed to marry. But not allowed to marry a regular, natural-born Jew. So, to teach people to stay away from such a big sin. So when you have a child, not necessarily just out of wedlock, but through cheating, in essence. A woman cheats on her husband and she has a child with the other man, or a man, and vice versa. So Rabbi Yeshua says, the child is mamzer, that's why he's so rotten. That's why he has no respect. The other, Rabbi Eliezer says, no. His mom, when she was with his father, she was nida. She didn't go to mikveh. That's why. That's why he's rotten like this. That's why he has no respect. Mikveh is very, very important in Judaism for women. So much so that if a woman needs to go to mikveh every month, obviously unless she's pregnant and so on, but when she's not pregnant, after the time of the month is over, she waits the proper time, then she has to go to the mikveh, and then everything is allowed. If a husband is with his wife without her being in the mikveh, the sins are extraordinary. I don't want to spend most of this shiur scaring you guys, but it's a lesser of a sin to be with his own mother than to be with his wife outside of the mikveh. That's how bad it is to be with a wife without a mikveh. So, in our logic, the thing with the mother doesn't even make sense to you guys right now. Right now you're thinking that I'm crazy. Mm-hmm. Or you're thinking that I just said something else. Maybe I'll watch this video later and maybe he didn't say what I just think he said. I said it. That's how bad it is. So mikveh is very, very important. So when Rabbi Eliezer said his mom was nida, she didn't go in the mikveh when she had him, that's why he's rotten. There's some mashmaut to this. There's a significance to this. Maybe he's right. Rabbi Akiva says, you're both wrong. His mom was not only nida, but he's also mamzer. He's both. Now Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer, they weren't nobodies. They're also huge. Why, you're saying both of us are wrong? Not just one of us is wrong, both of us are wrong? He says, I'll prove it to you. They find the boy's mother, and Rabbi Akiva says to her, listen, tell me the truth. If you tell me the truth, I promise you Olam Haba. Your child, when you had him, is he a mamzer and also you were nida, or just one of them? She goes, you promise Olam Haba? Only if you tell me the truth. She goes, both of them. Rabbi Akiva said, Rabbi Akiva no. The point here is that when you have a marriage that's full of holiness, it needs to be full of holiness from the beginning until forever. It can't just be one part here, one part there, sometimes sin, sometimes mitzvah. When I'm here at home, I'm a tzaddik. When I go on vacation, I'm a complete goy. Can't do that. It's either yes or no. And it's very important to involve the wife or the husband with everything that you're doing. When someone is doing tshuva by themselves, if they're doing it by themselves, they are literally going to be destroying their own life. Because if you do not involve your family with it, meaning your wife, if you have kids, your kids, it's a process that you're all going through together, you will slowly but surely become the outsider within the family. If the wife starts keeping Torah and mitzvot, and the husband and the kids are not, she will eventually become the joke of the house. If the husband becomes the tzaddik, and everybody else continues their secular ways, he eventually becomes the stranger. The way to do tshuva, even if it takes longer, even if it takes harder effort and more effort, is to make it a combined effort. Because that's how you reach it together, and it's permanent. That's the right way of doing it. When Hashem told us that if the entire Am Yisrael sins, I don't want a korban from each one of them. If each one of them makes a sin independently, I want a korban. But if all of them sin, I want one korban for everyone. I want unification. Unification is very, very important to Hashem. And unification is the key to succeed within marriage. And that's something that I think is really, really important to know from the beginning to the end of not just this parasha, but also just overall. Another thing that talks about, actually mentions the one of the reasons we learn about the mikveh, by the way, is from this parasha. It says in chapter 8, verse 6, Moses brought Aaron and his sons forward and he immersed them in water. After Aaron finished his part of the process of inaugurating him as a Kohen Gadol, was to immerse him in water, which made the it's one of the ways that we learned that water is a holy thing, and it's part of becoming holy, going to the mikveh and so on. I'll finish it with this one important thing. When you have a life that you're trying to make holy, you're trying to succeed in this life, you're trying to make parnasah, you're trying to have good kids, you're trying to have a good marriage, you're trying to be good, trying to have a good life. You always have to remember that marriage requires two partners. One is your spouse, and two is Hashem. If you do one without the other, it's a matter of time before it fails. The word ish in Hebrew, man, is Aleph Yud Shin. Isha is Aleph Shin Hey. The letters for Hashem's name are Yud and Hey. If you take the Yud out of Ish, you have Esh, it's fire. If you take the Yud and the Hey, the Hey out of the Isha, you also have Esh, fire. Meaning that a man and a woman without Hashem is just fire. The same goes if it's a man trying to live without a wife, just being independent. Having that life succeed is very, very rare. Why? Because you're eliminating a significant part of your purpose in life. But sometimes people make the decision where they choose a spouse even when they're not happy with them, even when they don't want to be with them. Because they say it's better that I am with someone even if I'm not happy, than being miserable and alone. That's a wrong decision. It's better to be alone and lonely than be with someone and miserable. The ideal is to be with someone and succeed. But the way to do it is by working together. So I think that if we take some of these things that we learn from this parasha, it could very easily make us successful. First thing is our thoughts. Think unification, one. Think the same with your wife. What she says to the kids, what she says, think alike. This requires daily effort. You cannot overnight become one person. It takes time. The second thing is, for men specifically, your eyes. One of the most important things you can do in order to create a successful marriage, and also not a marriage only with your spouse, but a marriage with Hashem, is watch your eyes. You have to watch your eyes. You cannot be a normal guy and look at women all day. Try to limit your TV. Try to limit your, obviously women, interactions and things like that. It's difficult in the beginning, but when you become used to it, it makes it much, much more pleasant to not only do it, but to live life with your wife, because the marriage becomes something different. When you know that the only time you're going to look at a woman is when you see your wife, and I'm talking about it in an intimate way, not just looking at women. Sometimes you have to talk to somebody in a normal way. It makes the connection and the attention you pay to that person, to your wife, so much more significant that it's almost like you are remarried every time you look at her. But when you're looking at different women every 5 minutes, on your phone, on the TV, on the streets, in the mall, at work, and so on, it makes it very, very difficult to think she's anyone special. Because men, our brains work differently. So again, this is not an overnight process. This is not something that I expect everyone to say, oh yeah, this is great, I'm going to start tomorrow. I doubt any man in the world is excited about doing it when they're first doing it. But again, this is one of the things that in order for marriage to succeed, the woman needs to know and feel that she's the only one. Not just physically, but also in their brain. And Hashem is teaching us in this parasha that if you want it to succeed, it has to be that way. So Be'ezrat Hashem, we're all going to succeed in all of these things, to have zealousness in our mitzvot, to have success in all of our efforts to get closer to our spouses, to our children, to Hashem. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll continue learning and getting closer to all of them. And thank you guys very much, and I'll see you guys soon.